expand it. And there is a button for that up here, expand, which will convert the tracing object into parts. So it will make it accessible to make further changes. But before you do that, one last thing I would recommend to always check in the settings is the ignore white. Now, the reason why that is important is because otherwise, if you don't have that checked, Illustrator will actually turn all the white parts, the empty details, into vector objects. And to prove that to you, let me turn this off again. Notice that currently it will create 1411 anchor points, 146 paths, but once I turn on ignore white, it reduces almost to half, because now it will only focus on the black details and it will completely ignore the white details. So that is actually very important, especially with the black and white scanned sketches. Now I can go up to expand and we can see the final vector artwork here. And of course, it's not very difficult to add any details back that we lost. I can just use the pencil tool, for example, and I can very quickly draw back a detail like this. So if any detail that was important is lost, I can always recreate it manually. Once again, remember that your original drawing on paper should have the same density on all the important lines before you actually bring them into Photoshop and then into Illustrator. That can help to get even better results. But let's have a look at the next image. So I'm going to select that one, and I already have the image trace panel up here. I am going to start with the preset. I will choose silhouettes in this case, and straight away we get a very good result here. The only thing I would say is we are losing a bit at the moment is the nose, the detail around the nose, and also the umbrella is starting to be merged together with the head of this character. So how can we improve that? Well, for starters, we can reduce the threshold. That will already improve the result. We can go all the way down. Let's just see. Yes, after a while, you can see that little gap appearing there. But of course, if I go too far down, I will see all those lines showing up from the original texture. That's something that we tried to already resolve in Photoshop with our adjustments, but we will have to still work at it here. I actually quite like some of them to show because it almost looks like the texture of the trousers. So a bit of it I don't mind showing, but too much of it obviously won't work. So something like that is a good balance. And that is what the threshold feature is like. It's like a balancing act. You always have to find whether it needs to go left or right, and it's really fine-tuning that until you get the best result. Also important to remember to keep the ignore white option on. That actually already came as an enabled feature with this silhouette preset. And I'm actually quite happy with this, so I can now click on expand. So if we compare the two illustrations in the layers panel, this one will have only one object because it's a big silhouette that's everything is all connected, so it's a compound shape. While if I open up the other group of the robot, there we will see several items because it has lines that are not connected. And the reason I'm showing this is because it always makes a difference how you handle a result which turns into one compound object or just even a simple shape, and another object that's made up of lots of separate individual parts. We'll see how to work with these in the next video, but let's move on to the other two images here. So let's start with the seagull. Let's see what happens if I just click on image trace again. When I do that, it will go ahead and do something very similar to what we've seen before. So it creates a black and white vector version of the original photo. Now, of course, if I go into the settings, I can change the preset, and maybe I want to use 3 colors. So in this case, because it's a photographs with colors, I might want to actually see those colors and turn them into vector artwork. I mentioned that when you have a very high resolution, a high PPI value on an image, that can cause problems, And this is exactly what I meant. It will take really long to render something if it's extremely high PPI. So if the resolution of that image is extremely high. So let me just go back one step. I'm just going to undo the tracing options and go back completely to before, so you can see how high my PPI value is. So it's definitely way above the necessary amount. Now, how can I reduce that? Once again, we will need to edit the original for that. So I'm going to click on Edit Original. And in Photoshop, you can go to Image, Image Size, where you can reduce the size. What I would recommend normally is to have the resample option on and then maybe reduce the width to 2000. That is still very detailed. As you can see, this is showing the changed size. I might even change that down to 1000. That will be perfectly enough detail for what we are doing now. So you don't want to use extremely high resolution images. If you use them, you might be able to get more detail on your vector art, but only